Hey guys, in today's video I want to go over one of the most exciting and back and forth games of Scrabble that I've ever played. Now, you can probably infer from the title that I ended up losing this game, but what's really cool is to this day, this game remains my highest scoring loss ever. And this game was played back in 2015, about 9 years ago, and I've played who knows how many thousands of games of Scrabble since, so that is saying quite a lot about just how exciting and notable this game was. My opponent in this game was Avery Mojica, who, like me, started playing Scrabble seriously very young, around the age of 10, and quickly and impressively rose in the ranks soon after. Avery was just about a year older than me, and he would have turned 26 yesterday, which is a big reason why I felt today was a good day to publish this video. Very sadly, Avery passed away back in 2019, and this was of course a huge loss for his family and friends, but also for the Scrabble community as a whole, because despite everything he'd already accomplished at such a young age, I have no doubt he would have gone on to accomplish many more things and probably win multiple championships. I'm very sad that Avery's no longer with us, but I'm thankful to have been friends with him for several years and also to have played hundreds, if not thousands, of Scrabble games with him, the majority of which were online, but several of which were at in-person tournaments, where it was really fun getting to hang out with him and know him a little bit better off of the Scrabble board. Avery and I played all different sorts of Scrabble games online. We played lots of serious longer games, we played lots of 1-minute Ultra Blitz marathons, we played lots of variants, and we had tons and tons of memorable games. But this one really sticks out in my memory, and I hope you guys see why after watching this video, and I hope this game, if nothing else, gives you a sense of just how good a Scrabble player Avery was. So, with all that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at this game. Avery was first and had a very nice rack to start things off. There are 4 7s that Avery can choose from with this rack. He can play Miss Rate, Maestri, Smarty, or Immorets. And he chooses what I believe is the best one. He plays Maestri, and the reason why I like this one is because it doesn't take an S, it's already a plural of Maestro, and it also puts the S and the R, which are consonants as opposed to vowels, next to the double letters. So, a bunch of choices here, but I think Avery picks the best one. Now, I also have a pretty good rack. I have the blank, and I do have several bingos. I find what I believe is my best one of Coevally with a blank Y through the E for 70. Some other options would include Overcall, also scoring 70, and Colluvia through the I, scoring 68. But Coevally looks like a pretty solid choice. Now, after his bingo, Avery drew a pretty interesting rack here. He's got some good stuff like AEST, but he's also got some bad stuff, especially the Q and also his triplicate E's. So he needs to figure out what to do. He's got really 2 options that stand out, one of which is to play Cot and Chi for 23 points, which scores pretty well and gets rid of his Q, but keeps 3 E's on his rack, which is definitely not ideal. His other option, which he decided to do, is trade, and he trades EEQ, scoring 0 points but keeping the really potent AEST leave. Both of these plays have reasonable arguments. Cot, of course, does score 23 points, which is 23 points more than exchanging, and it also opens a nice S-hook for him with Cots. However, keeping 3 E's is really going to set him back in the race for the next bingo on a board that, given we started with a bingo each, is already really wide open. So I think I like Avery's choice here, going all in on trying to play the next bingo and really take the initiative that way. I had a bit of a clunky rack myself here, with 6 consonants and a single I as my vowel. And I made what I think is a little bit of a mistake. I played Flying through the L for 26, which is not bad. It scores 26 points, gets rid of a bunch of my consonants, and keeps DH, which is not a bad leave. However, Dignify through the I in Maestri would have been a little bit better, as it scores 1 more point, gets rid of another consonant, and gives me another shot at drawing some of the good tiles in the bag, like the blank or the 3 remaining S's. So a slight inaccuracy on my part. And Avery on his next rack did indeed draw a bingo, so vindicating his choice on his last turn to exchange tiles, and he plays Abreast for 68 points next to Maestri. This looks like a pretty solid play. Another option might have been Bearcats through the C in Coevally, scoring the same amount, which is a little bit more defensive, not putting a T in the triple-triple line like Abreast does. So Bearcats, as Avery did acknowledge after the game, would have probably been better, but nonetheless, Abreast is still a very nice play, and he retakes the lead 142 to 96. And I here have another fairly clunky rack with 2 H's. I knew I definitely wanted to address the opening Avery just created at the bottom of the board, and I could do so by getting rid of both of my H's with Heth for 30, which is not a bad play, but I didn't love keeping a leave with 3 vowels and 1 consonant, so instead I played Ho, scoring 31 points, keeping one of the H's on my rack, but I didn't mind keeping 1 H so much. 2 H's is not great, but 1 H can actually be pretty good for scoring, so this looks like a pretty reasonable choice on my part. And Avery did not draw well after his second bingo. He draws a J and 6 vowels, but he finds his best play here of Joe for 31 points. Yes, it does keep 4 vowels, which isn't great, but 31 is a lot of points to pass up. And at least if you're going to keep 4 vowels, keeping unduplicated vowels A, E, I, O is not a bad way to go. So, not the most exciting play, but definitely Avery's best option. And how did I draw? Not great. I pulled the dreaded UW combo out of the bag, and I don't really have a great way to get rid of both of them. I went with How over here for 32 points, which looks like a good option. DIU is not a great leave, but at least I get rid of my W and score pretty well. Now Avery draws very well. He has aneroid as a 7 on this rack, drawing 3 consonants to his 4 vowel leave. However, aneroid does not play on this board. But Avery makes a very sharp play, finding his only playable bingo, an 8-letter word through the M in Maestri, Radio Man for 72 points, further increasing his lead to 86 points. And I draw another fairly clunky rack. I don't get a O for Utilidor, so I need to settle for a pretty low-scoring play here. And I go with Lurid for 12 through the R in Radio Man. This doesn't look very satisfying, but there aren't a whole lot of better options. And at least with Lurid, I do create another place for myself to bingo down the B column, which at this kind of deficit is definitely something that works in my favor. Avery draws the Q, but he does have a couple of U's to go with it, and this works very well for him, as he makes by far and away his best play here, scoring even more than any of the bingos so far have, with an 84-point play of Peaked through the I in Flying, increasing his lead now to well over 100 points. Avery is now up by 158. And I'm really in a pickle here, because I have the K and the G, which are not good tiles, and I have a bunch of other good bingo tiles. And at this kind of deficit, I need to bingo and quickly. One play I could make here, which I didn't actually see during the game, is Klieg for 28 points, which scores pretty well, gets rid of my K and my G, and hopefully I can draw a bingo on my next turn. Another cool option, which I also didn't consider, would be Jargon, a sneaky play through the disconnected jar and N on the board. But I'm not sure I like this because the K is going to really hamper my bingo chances, and like I said, at this kind of deficit, I need to bingo ASAP to come back into this game. So in this position, I decided to do something a little bit more drastic. I opened a triple-triple line with icon to the N in Radio Man. Figuring that this probably isn't going to work very well, Avery, if he's at all able to, is surely, having this kind of lead, going to try to block the I, but maybe if he does, I'll at least be able to hit something to the D in Peaked, and I'll at least create a distraction for him that he has to deal with. So let's see how this worked out. Unfortunately for me, Avery drew the second blank after his 84-point play of Peaked, and is going to bingo again here. He finds his only playable bingo of Infule down the B column, scoring 68 points. Now, it's worth mentioning that Avery noted after the game he regretted this play. It's not too often that your only playable bingo is not your correct play, but in retrospect, Avery felt he should have actually sacrificed a lot of points here to block the triple-triple opening I just created with a play like Kulfi for 24 from the K. The idea is that with a play like Kulfi, Avery is still going to be up about 160 points with the blank in hand without any major threats on this board. So that is probably a more commanding position than the position after Infule, because despite being up over 200 points after Infule, there is always the risk that I hit a massive triple-triple through the I in Icon and potentially come back and nearly tie this game. That being said, you can't fault Avery for taking his only playable bingo, and even with the triple-triple possibility open, it's very hard to imagine anything going awry with a lead of over 200 points. However, unfortunately for Avery, something did go awry here, as I drew this rack, AEEGMRT, and I do indeed have a triple-triple available through the I. So for all of you who see it, very well done. It is Emigrate for 158 points, which I played almost immediately. So this was very good news for me. However, the bad news is I am still down 50 points and a turn, because Avery's lead was so massive. So this was great news for me. I'm now back in the game, but Avery is still firmly in command. And that's especially the case for him after this very nice draw, including a bunch of good bingo tiles and the Z. And he makes a great play here. He scores very well with Zaire for 59 points in the bottom left corner of the board, once again bringing his lead to over 100 points. Now, I do draw a couple of S's here as well as the X, so I take the opportunity to score well playing XIS for 48 points, hooking Flying to make Flyings. Now, admittedly, I was not sure that Flyings was good, but I knew at this point in the game to have any chance I needed to take this play and get those 48 points. Avery made the correct decision to not challenge, as flying's is indeed valid. And fortunately for me, Avery drew absolute garbage on his next turn. He was faced with this lovely assortment of 7 consonants: B, N, 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 T, T, W. He actually has a reasonable play here that doesn't involve trading. He could play want for 20 points through the O in icon, keeping B, N, N, T. And this looks like a reasonable option. However, Avery opts to exchange all 7 tiles here, which at first might seem a little bit drastic, but I think is a very smart decision. The idea is that at this point in the game, Avery's up enough points that realistically the only way he's going to lose is if I bingo. And he figured that if he trades 7, then if I were to bingo, what am I going to draw? Well, with only 9 in the bag, that means 7 of the 9 tiles, from my perspective, are going to be the junk that Avery just threw into the bag. So if I bingo, thereby playing 7 tiles and needing to redraw 7 tiles out of the bag, I have a very high probability of drawing the vast majority of the junk that Avery is throwing into the bag. So a really, really savvy strategical decision by Avery here. Sacrificing 20 points immediately, but figuring that if I want any chance to come back in this game, I need to bingo, and then he's going to be completely sabotaging me because, like I said, I'm going to be drawing all of these consonants, and while I might take a little bit of a lead if I do bingo, I'm going to be completely helpless in the endgame trying to deal with all of this, and Avery is almost certainly going to be able to outscore me. So really, really smart and advanced thinking here by Avery, and let's see how it worked out for him. Unfortunately for me, I, like Avery, also had no vowels. And this was at first the last thing I wanted to see, being that I was still down 60 points and needed to mount a comeback quite quickly if I wanted any chance to win this game. However, I then took a little bit of a closer look at some of the vowels available to me on the board, because I figured with a rack with no vowels, if I was going to do anything reasonably productive, it would involve playing through vowels on the board. And as I took a closer look at the E in peaked, I noticed something amazing. Despite having no vowels on my rack, I actually had a playable bingo. And I know that sounds crazy, but if you guys want, feel free to pause the video and see if you can find the bingo I have through the E in peaked. Now, before I reveal what the bingo is, it's worth mentioning that this position was actually featured in Scrabble legend Joe Edley's book, Everything Scrabble, as one of the puzzles, as you guys can see on my screen here, so that is pretty cool. And the bingo is encrypts, which actually scores very well, getting me 92 points. And with that, I take my first lead since very early in the game, going up by a score of 487 to 456. So Avery at first was definitely surprised, understandably, to see this bingo come down with no vowels, but then he realized something. His decision on the last turn to trade 7 was going to really pay off handsomely, because look at the unseen tiles now from Avery's perspective. It's the 7 tiles he threw back, of course, the B, N, 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 T, T, W, plus an A and a U, which, especially the U, aren't particularly helpful with those tiles. So Avery knows that I'm going to really be struggling with my last rack. And not only that, Avery finds a really nice high-scoring play here. On the left-hand side of the board, next to infulate, he uses that triple word score with several overlaps, playing Vogie for 60 points. It doesn't look like a play that would score that many points, but it just goes to show you the power of using a triple word score both ways, and also the double letter score, which Avery uses to play his V. So with that, Avery is now back in the lead, 516 to 487, and as Avery so carefully planned a turn ago, I have garbage. I do at least have one vowel, I have an A, but I've got 3 N's, 2 T's, and a B to go with it, and it's going to be pretty hard with all of this on my rack to make up 29 points. I do see that Avery has D-O-U-W, which especially with the U-W combo isn't the best rack, but like I said, it's going to take me several turns to play out with all of these tiles, and I pretty much knew here that I had no chance of winning this game. I made my highest scoring play of Bat for 29 points, which for now does tie the game. It's 5-16 apiece, which is an insanely high score for a Scrabble game, and we're still not quite done yet. Here, Avery knows that I'm certainly not going to be playing out next turn with N, N, N remaining on my rack, so really all he needs to do is play off his tiles in 2 turns, and he's going to win this game. And he does that nicely, starting with Woo for 19 points. And here, I know he's got DU, he's going out on his next turn, so there's nothing better for me to do than just score as many points as I can, which I do by playing Gnaw for 12 with one of my N's. So the score is now 535 to 528 in favor of Avery. So all he needs to do here is play out and he's going to win this game. He finds his highest scoring outplay of dup to the P and encrypts. And when all is said and done, after he gets 4 bonus points from my 2 unplayed ends, he ends up winning this game by a final score of 551 to 528. So there you have it, guys. What a wild game, and like I said, to the best of my knowledge, 528 to this day remains the highest number of points I have scored in a game that I've lost. Of course, I've scored more than 528 many times in a game that I've won, but it's very, very rare to score more than 500 and still lose, let alone 528. So pretty amazing stuff. And as crazy as it sounds, I think the play that Avery made this game that stands out to me the most isn't any of his bingo finds or anything like that. It's when he exchanged 7 a couple of turns ago. Back in this position, it would have been so easy to automatically just play Want for 20 points, taking an 81-point lead. But Avery showed such remarkable foresight here, trading, and not only trading, but trading all 7. Another reasonable option might have been to trade 5, let's say, keeping NT. But trading all 7, as we saw, worked out exactly as Avery planned, because after I bingoed, I drew 6 of the 7 tiles that Avery threw back into the bag with the exact plan that I would draw them and have trouble playing them in the endgame, and that is exactly what happened and exactly how and why Avery won this game. So, pretty crazy that an exchange of all things, to me, was his most brilliant play this game, but I think it just shows you how diverse Avery's skills were. Not only did he have great word knowledge, he was awesome at finding bingos really quickly, but he also had a really good strategical understanding of the game in positions like that one. So that's about it for this one, guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and of course, if you have any fun Scrabble stories about Avery, please feel free to share them in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Really hope you enjoyed it, and have a good one. Bye-bye.